Our brains were not designed for endless channels, constant notifications, multiple apps, text messages, emails, Snapchat, 40-hour work weeks, plus social events. No wonder we all feel so overwhelmed and frazzled and on high alert. So now more than ever, it's important for us to take a step back, slow down, start living intentionally. And I know from personal experience that this can have such benefits on mental health and well-being. And today I want to share with you some of the steps that you can take to start your journey, no matter what your situation is. But first, I want to share a little bit about how slow living found me. I was an extremely anxious child, worried about exams, about presentations. I would worry about the future. I'd worry about my family, my friends. I had a lot of negative thoughts about myself. And from a young age, I was an overachiever. So in primary school and secondary school and in university, I tried my hardest to succeed. I really pushed myself and berated myself when I didn't think that I did good enough. Nothing was good enough for me. I wanted to really garner respect from others. That was so important to me. I remember in university, I was so hard on myself that at one point I had a routine where I even scheduled in my bathroom breaks. Like, who does that? I did. That time of my life. But that didn't end there, because then I entered the work world. And all those ways of viewing the world and of viewing myself just continued into my work. I wanted to be perceived well by my employer. I wanted to be seen as a high performer, someone who's a really good worker. I wanted to be seen as smart. I really wanted to have pride in myself. And that meant that I would overwork. I would work late. There was this big idea of, millennials are lazy. I did not want to be lazy. And so I pushed myself and I pushed myself. And as I transitioned into being a therapist at an agency, that continued. But I had the added layer of really being a bleeding heart and caring for my clients, which meant that not only was I working late on paperwork, but I was working late seeing clients. I was thinking about my clients. I was worrying about my clients. I was not well. I was really not well. My family, my friends could see it. I was deteriorating, and I was deteriorating fast. And they were telling me, Emily, slow down, stop. And when you're on a downward spiral, it's really difficult to recognize what you're doing and how things could be different. And I continued on that path until I did burn out. And I burned out hard. I spent the first 3 months just a zombie on the couch. And the last 3 months of that burnout leave, I spent trying to reconnect with myself, reconnect with others, and just re-enter the world. It was a very scary time for my husband and me. And prior to that, I knew work was difficult and I was trying to find ways to escape. I had looked at the idea of private practice, but I had also thought about having, I wanted a baby, and I was thinking, at least if I have a baby too, I'd have some time off. And I wasn't able to get pregnant for a very long time. At the end of my burnout leave, though, I did become pregnant just without even trying, which is amazing. But that made me realize that I couldn't keep living like this. I knew it. Before I even got pregnant, I knew I can't keep living like this. If I burn out again, I didn't know if I was going to be able to ever be okay again, ever be able to really work with clients again, ever be truly myself. And when I had my child, I knew I wanted to be there 100% for my child. I wanted a certain kind of life, and I could barely even take care of myself. I did not know how I could take care of my child. And working with kids, because I was at my agency, I worked with children and adolescents. The key thing they want is quality time from their parents. They want the connection. And I could barely even show up for myself at that time. And I was not gonna let myself fall back into old patterns. That was not gonna happen. And so as I healed, I started focusing on what was truly of value to me, how I wanted to live my life, how I was living my life, and how it was or was not aligned with what I wanted. And I started making changes. And it was a process. But I'm here now, and I want to share with you some of the first steps that you can take, that I took, that I think could really help set you on this journey. The first thing I want you to do is evaluate how you spend your time, how you spend your days. It might be helpful for you to keep track of it on a document or a calendar and see in your agenda, how are you spending your time? Becoming very aware of how you spend your time and how you view your time. In the past, I always thought I was busy. If somebody asked, how are you? I would be like, I'm super busy. And I felt like I was working overtime and everything. But what I realized is that I was doing busy work. I was making to-do lists and reorganizing my to-do lists. I was procrastinating and doing little things here and there. And I just felt overwhelmed. Like when you have too many things going on that are also not things that are of interest to you, it can be hard to throw yourself onto anything. Everything feels like an insurmountable mountain, even making a phone call. And I recognize that that's what was going on for me. So maybe evaluate how you're spending your time at work. You know, what are you doing at work? Or if you're doing overtime, is it true overtime that you need to be doing? Honestly, I don't think most of us need to be doing the overtime that we are doing. Unless, you know, when I worked at a victim services unit, yeah, I had to work weird hours, but I was working with victims of crime and tragic circumstances at that time. But when I was an employment counselor, I didn't need to work overtime. There's always more work to do. So start evaluating. And you'll find that even if you don't make any changes after just viewing that, you will start becoming more intentional with your time and your choices just by virtue of being aware of how you spend your time. So just the awareness in itself will help you be more intentional. It'll also allow you to have more control and feel that you have that control over your life. Because a lot of times we rush through life thinking that we have no control. We work, we go from one thing to another, and it's really autopilot, and we can feel like we have no control. When you truly look at your time, you might notice periods where you're just doom scrolling, and that's not actually feeling good for you. And how could you change that? But you have made a choice to do that. You have control. And having control and knowing it is so empowering. So awareness leads to a sense of control as well. The next step is a fun one for me. And it was like the biggest step for me in my journey. And it sounds silly, but it was decluttering. And decluttering my physical world, but also my mental world and my schedule. I would recommend starting by decluttering your physical world. I felt like I was drowning in stuff. I am someone who loves to buy things for that dopamine hit and hates owning things. Like, it stayed in boxes sometimes or just pushed aside, and I kept things being like, well, what if one day blah, blah, blah. No, I couldn't do that anymore. So I started decluttering, and I'm not done because I'm doing it slowly. Slow living, I'm doing it slowly, but I am, so I don't feel overwhelmed because it's a practice. It's not a one and done. It's a continuous thing. And when I decluttered my world, I had so much more room for thoughts and for slowness and for breathing, like breathing room. And it starts the practice of evaluating what you have and what is truly of importance to you. Because sometimes we just keep everything. We just hoard everything. And then when you really evaluate what you have, you might notice that some things are of value to you and some are not. And that starts the process in a very physical way. But then that translates also to how you're spending your time. You will learn to prioritize your time. Your time is the greatest thing that you have. We have so much limited time on this earth. So time is valuable. And you might start looking at your schedule and being like, why am I doing certain activities when they're not actually meaningful to me? For instance, I was recently invited to sit on a few board of directors for some companies. And I love the companies. They do great work. However, I knew that if I said yes to that, I would have to say no to something else. And if I said yes to sitting on the board of directors, I would have to say no to spending time with my family. Or even if they're morning meetings, it'd be saying no to like sleep, which I don't want to do yet. So at this point in my life, I had to turn them down because those weren't my priority. My family is my priority. And you can't have a million priorities. You really have to be selective. So it's important to learn to say no, and it's important to learn to schedule less. For me, if it's not a hell yeah, then it's a no. Okay? And that's so different than how I used to be. I used to be a sure girl. And what did that give me? It gave me a burnout. So I'm really intentional with what I say yes to. And of course, at work, it's really difficult to do, but you have so many areas of your life that aren't just work. I know it can feel overwhelming to just have work. Even that is so much. But the more we can focus on parts outside of work, the more you'll see how much life there is to live that isn't related to your work. If any of this was resonating with you and you would like to join the community of like-minded individuals, I would invite you to hit the subscribe button because I'll be posting more videos like this weekly. So I would love for you to join us. I would love for you to reflect on what makes a life worth living for you. What is of value to you outside of what society tells you you should or must or have to have as a value? What is truly important to you? And if you can put that in the comments below, I'd love that. I'd love to see what everybody in the community does value, and we can talk in the comments. And remember that this is a journey. Slow living is a journey. It's life, right? But it's so worth it because it's a journey to authenticity. It's a journey to coming into yourself. And it really is worth it. And I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to watch this video. And I'll see you in the next one. Keep living your authentic life. Bye.